Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolfe and Gavin Schall here, and your New York Knicks lose 114-98 on the road to the Boston Celtics, second game of a back-to-back. And they really missed RJ Barrett, who was out with a headache. Hopefully he took plenty of Excedrin and can get ready for Wednesday. But Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle put their best foot forward, had really good games. Ultimately, just not quite enough for the Knicks to overcome the super deep, super talented Celtics. We'll talk about it more next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome into Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day. Whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in sights and sounds on YouTube, we appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And if you want to hear from us before, after, in between every game, and right from the text messaging app of your phone, you can check us out on Subtext. So be sure to check that out in the episode description if that's something that interests you. I'm Alex Wolfe. I'm editor-in-chief at Knicks site, The Strickland. You can find Strick.land. And he is Gavin Schall, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And I am clearly almost fumbling over my words, but I held on. I held on like a running back that got it and bobbled a little bit and then managed. I was like Alan Lazard, wide receiver the other day for the Jets. Nice bobbling catch because that's about all he can do. This isn't Locked On Jets. This is Locked On Knicks. Gavin, it was an interesting game here. We were talking about it before we started recording. It was one of those where even when the Knicks were keeping it competitive, you just kind of had that feeling that it wasn't going to work out for them in this game. And I shared that sentiment. I mean, the short RJ Barrett, that's the Knicks star power right there, is being able to have RJ, Brunson, and Randle out there all at once right now. And without having that against a team that has four guys that can really torch you in Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, and Holiday, along with the great role players that the Celtics have, I think it was just a little too much for the Knicks in this game, and where they ultimately just kind of, I wouldn't even say they let go of the rope late. They kind of just ran into a buzzsaw when Jayson Tatum went like God mode and hit a bunch of threes and just completely buried them to end this game.
Yeah, it felt like the phrase I kept throwing out to my Nets-loving roommate, who just had a big smile on his face throughout the whole third and fourth quarter, was the Knicks just kind of ran out of talent. That's what it felt like. And in the first half, like when they were winning, obviously they just had that terrible final 2-minute stretch where they blew, I think it was about an 8-point lead, and the Celtics just came right back and they let out multiple leak outs. One of them was on Julius Randle, where like Peyton Pritchard just sprinted right down the court. And then after Jalen Brunson hit a crazy shot with 7 seconds left, like Jalen Brown answered right away with a 3. And you just got the feeling like, all right, if those types of shots are going in for the Celtics, there's just no way the Knicks are going to be able to score with them. And for the people who listen to it, like when we had our Fix the Knicks episode, like I was talking about that Pelicans game earlier in the year and just how small the Knicks looked on the perimeter against like a team with kind of freakish modern long wings. And the Celtics are sort of the ultimate example of that. Like it's a team full of like velociraptors with 20-foot wingspans and no RJ Barrett. Like the thing that stood out to me the most was just the Knicks' lack of dribble penetration. And we talked about how good their ball movement was last game, Alex, but you only get that ball movement like by like crashing into the paint and like drawing defenders and getting defenders out of position, because if not, there's nowhere to swing the ball. And we saw, I mean, Brunson was certainly able to win one-on-one a lot in this game. And honestly, it was just a lot of Julius Randle in terms of generating those swing sequences. So we'll get into it, but give him a lot of credit for, again, playing unselfish. But it stood out to me that Immanuel Quickley, like a guy who torched this team on this court, 9 months ago now, like couldn't even come close to replicating that effort. Like he did almost nothing in this game. Quinn Grimes, who we hope to see make progress in that capacity this year, like he was weirdly silent in a game that I thought like, all right, golden opportunity for him to have a big night. Josh Hart had a pretty good game, but it was mostly just him shooting uncharacteristically well from 3. I say all that to say the Knicks desperately need RJ Barrett. And I think it's a little worrying again, maybe only against the best teams in the league, but a little worrying that the Knicks like couldn't get more from other guys. And it really stands out as a weakness when one of those big three is out.
Yeah, certainly. And, it doesn't help that Tibbs decided to go 8-man rotation in this game, too. Like, it definitely seemed like part of it was that this was an extremely physical game. And I think the Knicks just kind of ran out of gas in a way, where it's like you're only putting 8 guys on the court. You've got multiple guys playing around 40 minutes. Like you had Josh Hart at 43, Julius at 38, Mitch at 33, Grimes at 28, so a little lower, but Brunson at 39 minutes. I mean, most of your starting lineup, they're just out there just running into dudes constantly and dealing with the physicality of this game. Whereas Boston was able to kind of, they had Tatum play like 40 minutes, but everybody else, and Holiday played 37, but everybody else was able to play, a little more reasonable of a minute load. And, they also only ran an 8-man rotation, but it just felt they felt a little more spry down the stretch. When you're able to give a guy like Derek White a little less minutes so that he can kind of, be disruptive late in the game like that, that's super helpful. And so I think that was just kind of what ultimately bit the Knicks in this one. And to your point about the role players, I thought they did pretty well. I mean, I do think that it would be really helpful if the Knicks just had another guy that could kind of step in and be counted upon in situations like this. Like, it would have been really nice to see Deuce McBride out there, even for like 5 to 8 minutes instead of just a minute of garbage time in this game, I think, because I just think that we would have seen, he could have gone out there and potentially messed with, I don't know, like Drew Holiday for a minute or Jaylen Brown. I'm sure that he was, would have been like salivating at the opportunity to try to make Jaylen Brown use his left hand. Anything like that, I think could have been a good opportunity to give Deuce a little bit of minutes. And he was given minutes the last time that RJ was hurt. So it was a little weird to see Tibbs just kind of go with this. But I think it just kind of goes with when these two teams play, it feels like a playoff mentality. And, I think that was how Tibbs was approaching this game. Like this was a playoff game. And it seemed like the Celtics were too, to be fair. Both teams really brought their all to this one. And ultimately, it was just kind of the Knicks just ran a little short in the talent department, like you said. And, there's only so much you can do when you're facing a team that has, a potential MVP candidate in Tatum, along with 3 other all-star caliber players that they start. And you're short your one guy who's been playing like an all-star this year. But also, lastly, I'll just say in regards to just missing RJ, like his physical brand of getting inside and drawing free throws, and not only that, but finding ways to finish around guys like Porzingis. Like, that was one of the most eye-opening finishes early in the season, was in that opening game when he had that like extended arm lefty layup around Porzingis that somehow evaded Porzingis' huge wingspan. Like, stuff like that would have been really useful from RJ in this game too. So I'll be intrigued to see what things look like the next time these two teams face off. Hopefully the Knicks are fully healthy then at that point and still have like Randle and Brunson playing as well as they have been, and still have RJ playing as well as he has, because it would be intriguing to see how they stand up against a team that, like, I mean, as much as it's painful to admit as a Knicks fan, the Celtics are probably the favorite to win the title at this particular moment in time. So, it's hard to even fault them for losing this game in the slightest, but yeah, it was still, I wish things would have gone differently, obviously.
Yeah, that was one of my main takeaways from watching this. That and look, maybe we'll get to have our Schadenfreude moment as Knicks fans. Like the Celtics have obviously famously had breakdowns in the playoffs over the last few years. If they don't win a title this year, or sorry, if they don't make it out of the Eastern Conference, because Denver's obviously a worthy opponent, but if they don't make it out of the Eastern Conference, it's embarrassing this year. Like, especially with how Milwaukee looks, there's zero reason they should not be a postseason team this year. And then my other final point on this is that if Immanuel Quickley wants to be a $25 to $30 million guy, like, this is just the kind of game that he, like, just no qualifiers needed, like, has to show up in. 26 minutes, 1 for 10 from the field, did make 4 free throws, was pretty good rebound. He was tied for the Knicks' second leading rebounder in this game with 6, had the same amount as Mitchell Robinson, which is partially a product of KP pulling him out, but that's also a problem in its own right. But that is like he was getting into the lane early, and it was just so clear, like, Porzingis at the rim really, really affected him. Once again, would have been cool to have Kristaps Porzingis on this Knicks team one way or another. And then he just seemed hesitant from there. Like, there's a play in the second half where Peyton Pritchard, of all people, just kind of locked him up. And again, like if you're like, he was awesome the other night. He's mostly been awesome this year. I'm always going to be super high on him. But if you want to be that guy and you want to be like a starter on another team in this league, you got to figure out something. You got to get to the line 10 times if your shot isn't there. And he just had nothing tonight. And I think that more than anything else, Alex, when you're missing RJ Barrett, like that murdered the Knicks in this game.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see, how things progress with Quickley, if he's able to. I mean, look, I'm not super worried, to be clear, but it was definitely, I would say, his weakest performance of the season to come out there and shoot 1 of 10. He still did some of the things that he does well, but like the distribution was way down, and it was mostly because whereas Brunson found ways to kind of, which we'll get to in just a second when we get to our next segment, Brunson found ways to take what the defense was giving him and still make something happen. Quickly, once they kind of turned the water off on him, wasn't able to quite figure out what to do. It didn't have a plan B to figure out how to get into the paint, how to set up his teammates, and how to make things happen as much as the rest of his teammates did. But we'll get into Brunson and Randle in just a sec, because I do think that they had some pretty awesome games between the two of them. But first, I got to remind everybody that today's show is brought to you by Ibotta. And how does free Thanksgiving sound? It is an expensive holiday, lots of food, big old turkey. Well, this year, Ibotta is here to give you cash back and help make sure your Thanksgiving table is complete, because who wants turkey without the gravy? Gravy being money. Starting November 1st for the 4th year in a row, Ibotta is giving 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem for everything you need to make your Thanksgiving feast complete. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers and upload your receipt. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much, but with Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can also earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. So download the Ibotta app now and use code LOCK to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving dinner starting November 1st. So that's right now. For those of you keeping score at home, just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED. All right, and we're back in to continue talking about this loss to the Celtics. And, Gavin, to be clear, we've kind of said the Knicks looked outmatched or whatever. They did keep things pretty close up until about the 5-minute mark. Jayson Tatum hit a 4-point play.
Winning most of the half, right?
Yeah, they were winning for a decent part of the first half, and then things were close and seemed like it was going to maybe go down to the wire. I think the Tatum 4-point play, to me, I was watching a little bit behind because I was watching on DVR, and so I saw the final score at about the point that it was like 95-90 or something like that, and then Tatum hit that 4-point play, and then I was like, oh, this is where things turn south. And it turned out that was exactly where they did. But prior to that, I mean, I thought that Brunson and Randle, still not quite the shooting percentage you want to see from him, like 37% overall, 25% from three, but got to the line 11 times, shot 82% from the free throw line, had 5 assists, 9 boards. I thought that he had more of a sense of urgency in terms of getting to the offensive glass in this game, which was good. And that reminds you a lot of like his great play last year. And then Brunson was sort of getting figured out like the rest of the Knicks team was in that third quarter when, as they noted on the broadcast, the Celtics started switching more and started, just kind of trying to hound the Knicks that way. And it was really bothering them. But then Brunson identified that pretty much immediately, started actively seeking out Al Horford. Poor old Al Horford just got torched by Brunson a bunch of times. And I thought that Brunson had a really solid game by the end of everything as well. So I'll leave it to you with which one to talk about first. But I thought that if nothing else, the play of those two was pretty encouraging in this game.
Yeah, let's start off with Randle. I mean, can we just this is probably a bigger picture conversation, but I almost want to throw up thinking about covering him, just in the sense of like we're forced to do a Doom pod once every 3 years, and in some ways it's not every 3 years, once a season, maybe twice a season. And then he's just normal again. And it's like one of those things where like it would be like if like your boss just showed up to work naked one day and then just came in the next day and like acted like nothing happened. And it's like, all right, I guess this is just life now, right? Like he's back to normal. Like last few games, he's been awesome. Like I think about the contrast between this game and the first Celtics game where Drew Holiday just tortured him. And this game, like 2 minutes in, he just gets Drew Holiday on his hip and gets right to the middle of the floor and scores. And you're like, oh, like he could just do that. And he's like living at the free throw line this whole game. And his passing was so good for most of the night. Like he had one in the first half. Benji tweeted out a clip of it if people want to go watch it, but he was double teamed and he like just waited for the exact right moment for the double to come in the pass. Like he would have taken another 4 seconds from there, but he immediately pivoted, whipped it cross court to DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo swung into the corner for Hart. I thought like the fact that Josh Hart got off to such a good start was a testament to how good the Knicks passing is this year relative to past seasons. He was just getting wide open looks that he wouldn't have gotten. He had like this ridiculous like double pump and one baseline jumper that while he was comparing to the famous Larry Bird shot, which might have been a little bit rich, but was still really nice to see. Had an awesome cut when like Jalen Brunson was trapped to get a dunk at one point, had another one off of Hartenstein to get like a finish. Like he was really active. Like it wasn't a perfect game for him. I mentioned like he let up that leak out. Like he had another play where like he just didn't get back down the floor because he was too busy complaining about a foul. And then on offense, there were a few different ones where he really over dribbled, and one of them led to like a really big 3-pointer. I think it was for Jaylen Brown in the third quarter. So there were frustrating moments, Alex, but by and large, I thought just like another really solid, really good game from him. And I guess we just got to pretend our boss was never naked because this seems to be what the norm's going to be for him from now on.
Yeah, I think too, one thing that stood out to me was just the absolute disdain he seems to have for Porzingis. Like,
yeah, that's a great point.
That goes all the way back to when Porzingis was a Knick and Julius was a Laker. But I mean, he hates Porzingis, man, for whatever reason. I mean, there was one point where he
between that and Sabonis, like, is he just anti-Eastern European guys for some reason? Like, is that a theme?
Maybe, I don't know. I hope not. That would be problematic. But
yeah,
he doesn't seem to want to try to like body Jokic every time they play. So maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't want to deal with Jokic and all of his brothers. I don't know what the case would be there, but yeah, it was. I mean, he damn near cracked one of Porzingis's ribs at one point by like barreling into him so hard and drawing a foul and completing the play. So that was pretty cool. I do wish that he had, his touch still just seems like it needs a little work right now for whatever reason. Like there was a number of probably the reason that his field goal percentage was so low. There was a number of times where he kind of bullied his way to the hoop and then wasn't quite able to finish it. And I wish that hadn't been the case because like he did the work. He got all the way in there and, just wasn't quite able to finish a few times and then had the rebound, tried to get like an immediate offensive rebound Melo style and just kind of had it snatched right out of his hands and wasn't able to finish those plays a few times. So I think that like, if you were just box score watching for this game, you might be like, well, he shot like crap, but really he was creating great opportunities for himself. And he was like inches away from having probably like a 35-point game, if he had just managed to finish a few more of those layups. So I really liked his process. I like that he was trying to space the floor, especially like he was very much playing the RJ role. Like he got cast in that in the second unit, which I thought was a good look, where he was out there with Hart, DiVincenzo, Quickley, and Hartenstein instead of RJ in the time that RJ would normally be playing with that lineup. And I thought they did a really good job there. Yeah, in general, I'm with you. Like the passing too was tops. I mean, he was the chief distributor in this game. He was the guy that the Knicks were looking for to kind of like stir the drink a bit. And then Brunson was more the guy that they were relying on to, get the ISO opportunities and just kind of get to his spots and make the shots tonight, which I thought worked really well for him, which I guess is a good segue to get to Brunson as well, where I just thought, I mentioned he switched himself on to Al Horford a bunch of times. He kind of just knew what was working for him in this game. Like clearly had a very great warm-up sesh from mid-range because he was looking for that shot all game and was hitting it. I would gripe maybe a little bit if they weren't going in, but they were. So it's like you can't fault on a make. You can't like get mad at that. So I just thought this game was very complete. it's kind of like, what more do you say about when Brunson has a good game like that? I did think that the most notable thing though was him being the one, and whether that came from the sideline or not, he's like the floor general. He's the guy that's out there to direct this offense and set the tone and everything else. He was the one that first identified, like, the Celtics are doing something that's making us not work right now. Let's seek out switches that work for us and, attack them that way and try to break them out of this defense, because the Knicks have traditionally always had a really hard time, especially under Tibbs, adjusting to if a team goes zone or if a team, switches their defensive scheme midway through, because it's not something that they can ever, conceptualize, because the Knicks never switch their schemes ever on defense. So, it's a foreign concept, but I thought that Brunson did a really good job of like identifying that, starting to attack that, and that did, for a small period of time, start to shift the tide at least a little bit, and that kept the Knicks tight with the Celtics for a bit until, again, Tatum just kind of went supernova and ended things late in the game.
Yeah, I thought it was notable that Breen really early on in the game picked up, like, oh, Jalen's like taking this extra seriously. And to your point, like he just wants to kill the Celtics every time the Knicks go against them. And this felt like, even without RJ Barrett, like he was out there and he was looking for a game similar to the one that he had in Milwaukee. And I thought he tailed off a little bit late. Like he just didn't really have it down the stretch. And that was another reason why the Knicks just couldn't keep up in the second half of this one. But early on, like he was doing everything and more. Like I wonder if this continues throughout the season, but he's sort of the new Julius Randle this year. And that Julius was like for a long stretch, I think the best first quarter scorer in the NBA, or one of the top 2 or 3 for most of last year. These last few games, we've seen Jalen really embrace that role. And he's just coming out. He's like, all right, like we are getting off to a hot start. I'm not leaving it up to anyone else. I love that he continues to push pace in non-traditional contexts, like off a make, like off a miss where the Celtics are back. Like he is trying to apply some pressure. And that was also clearly an emphasis from Tibbs. And it was a smart one, because I think he was just cognizant of, all right, without RJ, we are just not going to have a lot of luck in the half court offensively against a team that's this good and has as many good rim protectors as the Celtics. Like inevitably the Knicks were just not going to be great in the half court in this game. And Brunson did a really nice job pushing at one point, setting up Grimes for wide open 3, getting Hart some easy shots. And they needed it tonight. They maybe even needed a little bit more of it. And he possibly just ran out of gas at the end, but it was a great game from him. I will finish up maybe talking a little bit more about the role players and the decision to start Josh Hart, because we both kind of thought that was an interesting one. But before we do that, I wanted to tell everyone at home about our good friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. You can score early this NFL season and this NBA season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's ridiculous. So I'm going to repeat it to make sure you all at home heard it. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Alex, I am always sure to update people on the championship odds. Recently, I've been talking a lot about the New Orleans Pelicans. I didn't feel that good about the Knicks, but the Knicks have been playing a lot better. And who knows, maybe if some injury luck goes their way, they could find their way to the finals. And then once you get there, you never really know. They are plus 4,600. So if you want to make some big money, lay it down on the New York Knicks to win an NBA championship this year. Why not? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off both the NFL and NBA seasons. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Alrighty. Let's keep it going, Alex. Let's talk starting lineup, because this was something you pointed out to me before the show, and I kind of pushed back on it, but you took issue with starting Josh Hart in this one. And I understood it just because the Celtics are so big, and like the Knicks already look small on the perimeter. We've already watched, like in the first game of the season, Jayson Tatum just kind of torture Quentin Grimes, who would be in picture perfect position, and it just wouldn't matter. So I understood it from that perspective. But in general, like the net rating of that lineup on the year has been really bad. And part of it is that Hart has been a little bit more of a hesitant shooter this year. Obviously, shot it really well tonight. But I'm with you in that I don't love the look of that starting lineup. I think it ended up being fine just because Brunson was so good and Randle was so active early in the game. But if either of those things hadn't been there, like the Knicks could have gotten run out of the building early. So I guess I see both sides of it. But what was your take on that?
Yeah, I think I think if you're replacing a player in the starting lineup who is as key to what the Knicks do right now as RJ Barrett, I just feel like you would want to find more of an analogous player to throw in there to keep the energy going the same way. And I wish that it was more tenable to throw Quickley in there, because I do love Quickley with Brunson, and having him out there with the shooting and the creation and everything else, I think would be really helpful. But I mean, I would probably throw Dante DiVincenzo out there to start going forward if RJ Barrett has to miss time any given time. I mean, he wound up only playing 16 and a half minutes in a game where Josh Hart played considerably more in this game. And like, again, Josh Hart he played a fine game, and he had, as you noted, like he shot 3 of 6 from 3, which is uncharacteristic for him. And DiVincenzo didn't shoot as well. But I just think fundamentally, if you're looking at what DiVincenzo does, it just lines up so much more with what you're losing from RJ Barrett. Like, he's more respected as a shooter than Josh Hart. I mean, part of why Josh Hart was able to make 3 threes in this game is because, just like we've seen with most teams worth their salt, he got left completely wide open on almost every single one of those attempts. And so the fact that tonight he was able to convert the practice jumpers is cool, but that isn't always the case. And that can sometimes screw the Knicks over, when they have him out there and it's like, okay, the ball gets to Josh Hart. The expectation clearly is if Josh Hart gets it there, that he has the green light to take it. And he often does, unless he hits the point like in the playoffs last year where he just gets so unconfident in his shot that he refuses to even put it up and just starts trying to put it on the ground and get inside. But like, I don't know. I just think that if you're trying to kind of create a lineup that can give you what the Knicks starting lineup has so far this year, which, to be clear, they're like one of the best 5-man units in the NBA right now, with how well that they've been playing, the starting lineup of Brunson, Grimes, RJ, Randle, and Mitch. So if you're looking to sort of replicate that, then I think, even if DiVincenzo is a little bit of a size decrease, he still rebounds well for his size, which, is part of the thing with Hart, with having him out there, is like, you want the rebounding and all that. But I think that just on offense, he gives you something a little closer to what RJ's been giving you lately, which is, isn't quite the ball handler, obviously, and isn't nearly the player at getting inside and finishing, which is the big thing that you miss out on, but can give you that spot up shooting gravity that you've been getting from RJ lately, can give you the passing ability similar to what RJ gives you, and certainly can give you the defensive chops to, kind of force turnovers and, get the fast break going in a game like this, where clearly that was the prerogative anyway. It just, I don't know. To me, it would have made more sense to start DiVincenzo, play him like 25 minutes in total or something like that, or let him close the game if he's playing really well, with those starters, and then have Josh Hart play, instead of like 43 minutes or whatever, play like, I don't know, 35. And, then he can float around, be that bigger presence in the moments that you need him to be, as far as, knocking around with a big team like the Celtics. But it just kind of, I don't know, that I hope that Tibbs entertains the idea of not going to this as his go-to RJ's hurt lineup. And I don't know for sure if that's going to happen, because Tibbs, like, we know him and we know how his brain works. And unfortunately, I don't think that he's really going to consider that seriously at any point this year.
Yeah, I think against the Celtics, I ultimately disagree, just because we watched Jaylen Brown just like physically bully the Knicks at different times. And one time, I mean, DiVincenzo might have just slipped up, but he fell to the ground there. Obviously, this was like a switch situation, but there was a play where Al Horford went right at him for a dunk, which would not normally be the matchup. But I think this team is too big, and they were too willing to attack those matchups like over and over again if the Knicks gave it to them. So this is the one time I actually agree with Tibbs being a size king or size queen. But in general, I think I would like to see a little bit more DiVincenzo with that group, just because even compared to Hart, like, he provides a little extra verve, and I like the shooting, and I think it would be fascinating in the right matchup. So I definitely see the theory there. The only other thing I want to say on Josh Hart before we finished up, I had maybe the play of the year for the Knicks, where he went up for a corner three, realized Drew Holiday was possibly going to block it, and just threw it off of Drew Holiday, caught it, and then drained the three. Like it was straight out of like Mike. That was really awesome. And for a moment there, I actually did believe the Knicks were going to win, because I was like, all right, you can't waste that play happening. Quentin Grimes, I wish he had tried to do a little bit more off the dribble. Great night shooting for him, 4 for 6 from 3, but just literally just didn't do anything else. Had 1 assist, had 0 rebounds, no steals, no blocks. I didn't really notice him on defense, which might have been a good thing. Like obviously he mostly, I think, got like he got some Drew Holiday in this game. He got like a little bit of time on Tatum and Brown. Like he was okay on that end. I just think on a night where RJ Barrett's not out there, if he's on the court for 28 minutes, like I don't love him taking 6 shots, and Josh Hart again, I guess in 15 more minutes, but taking twice as many. That feels off to me. But look, that's not me calling out Tibbs. That's me calling out Grimes. Like he has to seek out those opportunities. And then the one other thing, Alex, was like I was like a tiny bit disappointed Mitchell Robinson, because obviously like the first Celtics game was maybe the one game of this year that he didn't really make a massive impact, and the same was kind of true today. And clearly defensively, it is always going to be a struggle for him in this matchup, like because he's trying to guard the paint and rush out on Kristaps Porzingis. And the Knicks are never going to just throw one look at KP. Like they're going to mix up what they're doing. But I thought, again, Mitch was caught in no man's land a little bit. And I don't know what the right answer there is. It's probably him leaning more towards the paint. And if KP kills you, KP kills you. But it wasn't like that was tough, and just total lack of offensive rebounding. The Celtics were super physical with him. And like I noted multiple times in the first half where I thought a foul probably should have been called, because Al Horford just kind of shouldered him in the back and pushed him out of the way. And once it was called, but most of the time it wasn't. But Mitch just like couldn't really get past that. And after like a great first play in this game where he set a screen for Brunson missed, and he just ran and got a putback dunk. Didn't do much. The one positive for Mitch is that I just thought back to Alex, like when we used to do like full segments complaining about his screens and how they were non-existent. He's such a good screener now. And he knows exactly, like it's similar to Dwight Powell where he'll screen and Brunson won't get an advantage, and he'll just say, all right, I'm going to come down 2 feet and set one on the other side. So that's really encouraging. Love Mitch. Just didn't think this was his best night. And I think this is going to continually be a very tough matchup for him.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's all matchup dependent to me. You know, I don't think that it was like an effort level thing or whatever. It's just the Celtics game plan very well and have the perfect personnel to draw him away from his spots. And, you know, just kind of, again, to your point too, where they called this game very loose, you know, for the most part. Like, I do think that he was doing his usual thing, but not getting, you know, we'll see often he gets a few calls a game usually for, you know, someone pushing him or whatever, because he's such a presence in the paint. And, you know, teams, that's like their only choice is to foul him, because they just don't know how to deal with him otherwise. And I do think that he didn't really get the benefit of those calls in this game, which was unfortunate. But yeah, I agree with you. You know, you could just call it matchup dependent or whatever, but also just straight up, you know, it was not one of his best games of the season. I don't know that I would have necessarily left Porzingis alone on the perimeter after how he destroyed the Knicks in the first game, which is why I sort of respected Mitch playing it how he did. And yet, unfortunately, you know, without anything better in the game plan to deal with that, like you're kind of just resigning yourself to, well, one of our best players and one of our best, you know, guys that really dictating the flow of any given game is just going to be completely taken out of this game by this matchup. And that's it. There's nothing they can do about it, or at least in these first 2 games, there's kind of been nothing the Knicks have been able to do about it in terms of those lineups when Porzingis is out there. Other than that, I can't think of too many more individual player notes here before we wrap up. I guess my last thing would just be to roast Wally Szczerbiak a little bit. This man had the gall to, on the sign off, say, or in the sign off to a commercial break, say, "Oh man, we got a real, you know, real fun game at the Garden here." No, sir, that's not the Garden. It's that place in Boston is not the Garden. You know, call it the stupid TD Garden or whatever. That's not the Garden, sir. You work for the New York Knicks. Get it right. Clyde would never. Yeah, Clyde would never. A Garden. Yeah. We're having a fun game in a Garden. That would have been fine. That would have been a great amount of shade. But You're working for the Knicks now, buddy. You're not playing for the Celtics anymore. Get that sorted out.
Yeah. I love this happens almost every time he does a game. Breen almost called him Clyde and admitted to it. And while he was like, well, that's a compliment. I was like, nope, it's just that he really misses Clyde.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's every time they do a game together, he's like Clyde and he looks over sad. He's kind of like, oh, and I'm going to feel so bad whenever Clyde like finally retires. Like, I think we're going to get a full season of like Mike being like, you know what, Clyde? Oh, no. And it's gonna be funny, but it's also gonna be sad. Anyways, on that dour note, I think appropriate to wrap up what was a somewhat dour game for the New York Knicks. They will get a chance to bounce back against the hated Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday. We'll have full coverage of that one for you. We'll have something to talk about tomorrow. But until then, he's Alex, I'm Gavin, and we will talk to you all very, very soon on Locked On Knicks.